Hey everybody, it's me Rita, and today we're going to talk about what happened in the beginning of the world, what happened during creation, and why did God create humanity. The whole question of why are we here will suddenly become very clear, and it will feel really great. So first, I'm going to get some water from my little tank right here, and I'm gonna get everything all filled up nice and. We gotta have a well-watered Rita to do this. Okie dokie. Let's get started. The reason why God created humanity was, if you think about the way humans look at like the genome, the human genome, and the possible ability to actually edit our genes to prevent disease and things like that. That's kind of a groundbreaking thinking, but it's something that we've always wanted to be able to do. It's the reason why we made Star Wars and Star Trek, especially Star Trek. Star Trek really gave people mentality and cutting edge medicine and replacing body parts with synthetic or real, whatever, replicated body parts that were made out of the same material as your own body, your own structure. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy awesome. But it's something that we're getting so much closer to being able to do now. And so if you think about what makes us want to do things like that level of control we want to have over our world, what we want to do with people, what we want to do with ourselves. And if you think about that, this is very much a mimicry of what God is. Yahweh and Yeshua, they and I just recently made a video about Yahweh and Yeshua, so you can watch that one. But Yahweh and Yeshua, they are, the Father and the Son, and they are two different personalities, but they are definitely work in perfect synchrony with each other. And hey everyone, nice to see you guys. What Yahweh and Yeshua do is what they did before they created humanity is it was a thought project. It was a thought experiment. In school you're given homework so that you can explore how different things work out together. You can understand why chemistry works a certain way, why these different causes create these different effects. And so whenever you're dealing with something like thought and the creation of life, Yahweh and Yeshua, they wanted to, and I should be mixing this up so that I can solve it for you guys. Yahweh and Yeshua, they wanted to create a world in which thought was mixed with the lowest common denominator, which was rock. Now, rock is not completely stagnant. If you ask any geologist, you learn that because rock moves and mixes over time with wind and weather and pressure, and the pressure of more layers on top of it compressing it down, and things becoming molten the further into the earth it goes, and the way it heats up and the way water carves its way through it. If even rock itself has a little bit of aliveness to its nature, just because it can change over the centuries, and it can actually, it's not completely stagnant. It's not just a dead thing that never changes. Everything in the world is capable of changing. But I would say in terms of life, rock is probably one of the lowest common denominators in the universe. And what Yahweh and Yeshua did was essentially, they said, okay, we're pure thought. And in fact, the hierarchy of the spiritual world is organized along hierarchies of thought. Hey, Dennis. And it's organized along how clear the thinking is. So, for example, Yahweh and Yeshua are at the top of the hierarchy. They are higher than everyone else. They have clearer thought, clearer thinking. They have clearer emotions, more stable emotions, deeper understanding, deeper wisdom, more wisdom than any of the other spiritual creatures, which is why they're at the top of the hierarchy. But literally that is, it's not the power, it's not the status, it's not, yes, those things give them more power naturally, But what gives them more status is the fact that they do have higher ability. They are clearer thinkers. They are clearer emotional beings than any of the other spiritual. Whether you're Catholic and you think about the other spiritual beings as being saints, whether you're Christian and you're thinking about the other spiritual beings as just being angels and that's it, and the people who are in heaven, after they died, and if you or if you think about spiritual beings as being as including Satan and the demons, in the spiritual hierarchy, Yahweh and Yeshua are definitely at the top because they have the clearest thinking and the clearest emotionality. Okay, so why would they create humanity? Humanity has the least clear emotionality and clear thinking out of everybody. Why on earth would they create a lower life form than they already had in the spiritual world? The spiritual world was already had these hierarchies, already had these gotta scratch my back here, already had these layers of people and layers of beings, and they were all based upon, you could increase your status in the spiritual world by increasing your clarity of thinking, by increasing your clarity of emotion. That is true here in the human world. If you can think more clearly, your status, automatically changes. You start changing the world around you, and your world starts becoming more and more the way you want it to be. If you clear out your emotions, you're able to more effectively change the world around you, and things start to become more and more the way you want them to be. So a lot of what has happened in humanity is based upon it's hard for me to talk and do this at the same time, which is why I almost always wait until the end of my talk to do this, because it's hard for me to focus on this and focus on talking at the same time. So if you see me make a move on this and then lose my train of thought, that's the reason why. I'm very much a one-track thinker. I don't believe too much in multitasking your thinking. And even though women have a higher capacity to do that than men, I don't think that anybody's actually truly capable of true multitasking in thought. I think they all have to I think that we all have to kind of do one thing at a time. So what happened in the case of humanity, it was Yeshua's or Jesus's idea in the beginning. He came, he came to Yahweh, they were talking about it, but Yeshua was the one who's like, hey, let's see what can happen when we mix pure thought and emotion, and we put it into rock, and we see how far we can get, and still and how much rock we can mix in with this, and how little thought we can have with that, and still have the lowest common denominator of that. It's up to the level of sentience, but it's still as much rock and as little thought as we can put into it. What is the level? What is the mixture that needs to happen? And what has happened is animals obviously came first. Whether or not you believe in creation or evolution, I happen to believe in both, but you don't have to happen to believe in both. But clearly, there were many little Cretaceous shells, little creatures that even today no longer exist, but we find them in sand. We find fossilized versions of them in sand everywhere. Just go dig out in your backyard, you'll find shells, just in your backyard. I happen to live in the Great Plains, which in the North America, which means that this used to all be seabed, which means literally just a little bit of digging, and I start pulling up little shells from thousands, millions, whatever millions of years ago, and these little shells are from what used to be an ancient seabed. So to say that they started off with humans is incorrect. Even the story of creation, even that has humans being created last, and that makes sense because you want to start with almost no thought at all and a little bit of rock, a little bit of earth, and to see what happens there. Okay, that did create something alive. Yes, it is living. No, it has no ability to think. It has no ability to control its thought. It's not clear. It's really muddy. It's just barely alive. Okay, let's put a little bit more thought. Let's put another drop of thought per, you know, billion units of sand, and let's put that in there, and that, you know, creates a little bit higher life form. You know, something closer to something that can crawl on the bottom of the ocean. You know, something that can actually move around a little bit. You know, I guess a little bit higher life form would be a fish that can swim through the water and navigate and actually plan its actions a little bit. They don't have a very long memory, but well, some mammals, some water mammals do, but fish are pretty short-term memory span. What happens with the fish is they naturally need to propagate. So the concept of reproduction also needs to be part of this. However, thought produces thought, life produces life. I do believe that from the very beginning, the injection of life into earth, into clay, did produce the ability to reproduce from the very beginning. I think that was kind of already in our genetic DNA, in anybody's genetic DNA, no matter what creature you know happened to be made at the time. But it was clearly something that developed over time. You know, these guys have all the time in the world. Yahweh and Yeshua, they have all the time in the world. So to wait several millennia to see how well the thought experiment is going along, that's nothing to them. That's like a Tuesday afternoon to them. You know, they go out on the front porch, they have some tea, they eat some sandwiches, you know, their favorite, you know, cheese and bologna sandwiches, and they walk back in toward the evening and they check on the thought experiment. And several billion years have passed on Earth, where these little, you know, Cretaceous sea, you know, creatures are you know, yes, they're alive, yes, they're reproducing, yes, they're there, but there's nothing more than that. Okay, then they put in one more drop, you know, they put in one more drop of life, and suddenly there's fish, there's the ability for fish to be there. And fish love, you know, fish have some life in them. They have some ability to exist in the liquids and in the ocean. And then, see, I'm looking at this and I'm not able to talk and do this at the same time. This is why I always wait until the end of my videos to solve this with you guys, because I don't have the ability to do both at the same time, hardly at all. So they put a little bit, another drop of life, and you suddenly have you know, a higher life form, a life form that has a little bit more ability to think, to plan for itself. Hey, Jason, Richard, Michelle, Lonnie, awesome. Great, so great to see you guys. Oh, I also want to thank everybody. Thank you so much for your donations, for your gifts, just blessing me financially. I love that. And whenever you bless me financially, of course, you get that much of my energy back inside of yourself. So it's a huge blessing, and I know it's a blessing for you. I'm so happy to be here and to be able to bless you in return. So I just wanted to thank everyone for all of your financial gifts. Thank you so much. But back to the life forms. I imagine that the concept of these creatures walking on land, you know, there have been quite a few, not just evolutionary theories, but there have been quite a few like documented, like this creature is clearly related to this creature, which is clearly related to this creature that is beginning to not just have fins, but is beginning to have kind of an ability to leave the water. Anybody who has ever been around polywogs, tadpoles, you know, tadpoles can only exist in water. Tadpoles have no ability to exist on land. But once they start growing, they have the ability to exist in both water and land. And then eventually the tadpole turns into a frog. And that's something that everyone needs to really understand about this, is that we are currently living in a life where there are creatures that they start out in the water, they start out, their younger selves are only waterborne, and then as they get older, they come out of the water, and they actually have lung capacity and ability to breathe air and not just get oxygen from the water. So that's a really big deal. That's a really big deal to have that still going on today. It's probably not even necessary to have it going on today, except as an example. But the fact that it's still going on and alive today, that's amazing. That's huge. I do believe whether or not we decide to go through all the creatures, so we're adding more and more drops of life, and we go through all the creatures, and then and what had been fish are now like, chameleons and lizards, and they're crawling around on land, and okay, well, they don't really have as much higher thought as we want them to have. We want them to have less mechanical animal brains and more higher thought brains. We add another drop of life. Okay, so Yahweh and Yeshua are busy. Again, to them, 1 billion years, no time at all. It's a Tuesday afternoon. It's a Sunday morning. It's a Thursday. Mid-afternoon project. And they go back into their little laboratory, this beautiful starry night sky, and they add one more drop to the mix, one more drop of life, one more drop of thought to the mixture of clay, and a whole splurge of things comes out of it. Splashes of the life and the clay mixed together become airborne. They become birds. Mammals, large mammals, whales in the ocean, dolphins in the ocean, and then elephants on land. Large blobs of this life turn into these large creatures that are complex, and they're able to reproduce, and suddenly they have a lot longer memory. Dolphins have long memories. They have the ability to communicate with each other almost as well as humans have the ability to communicate with each other. Dolphin cliques is their social structure is highly complex, just like humans are, and that's why dolphins and humans love each other so much. If you're one of those people who loves dolphins, believe me when I tell you, dolphins love you back. Dolphins and humans both have complex social structures. They both have complex linguistic systems, and they communicate with each other in complex ways all the time. So literally, if you have a chance to get together with a dolphin, meet a dolphin, or swim with them, any of those things, it's like you're swimming with an underwater human. They are very, very similar to us in many ways, and they are almost as complex as we are as well. Literally, if they had the ability to control electronic devices with their fins, they would probably be, at least at Windows 95 level of technological advancement by now as well, because that's how complex their thinking is, and how highly developed they are. Whales as well. That's true for whales and elephants. We all know that elephants have, massive memories that just go way, way back. So, so there's a lot of life in a lot of different types of animals. Today we still have snakes and lizards. We still have, but we also have primates. We also have just, dogs, cats, and then we have monkeys. And I think I would not be surprised if, and again, this is because, I believe in both creation and evolution, and I am personally acquainted with Yahweh and Yeshua, and many of you are as well. So, I'm not making myself better than you on any of that stuff. Yahweh and Yeshua, they were finding that primates are, for example, monkeys have the ability to transfer unconscious thought over long distances. So, for example, and this is something that has been researched, and you can look up. And I don't remember the name of the study. I really should look this up before I start talking about this. The name of the study is oh boy, I don't remember. But they started teaching monkeys certain behaviors on one island, and then on another island there was no communication between the two islands. There was no travel. There was nothing, but on the other island, the monkey started behaving the same way. So this is obviously not just a transfer of of conscious thought. This is a transfer of unconscious thought. Okay, now we're getting into, okay, what's conscious thought, what's unconscious thought, what's going on in the subconscious mind, and is there a collective unconsciousness like Carl Jung has always claimed? Um, I love Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung because they're polar opposites of each other. Yeah, they were best friends, and they only had to split up because their ideologies needed to expand in different directions. That's the only reason why they stopped being as close friends. But for decades, they were friends, very close friends. And the way I would actually describe them is through the Myers-Briggs test, which is Sigmund Freud was a standard ESFP personality type, or maybe an ESFJ, but he's definitely a sensing feeler, a sensing person and a feeler person, non-intuitive, non-brain based. And then Carl Jung was definitely intuitive, dominant, and thinker dominant, which is brain-based dominant. And Carl Jung is the one who came up with the collective unconscious. And because Sigmund Freud has always been said that he was afraid of the unconscious mind, or like to dismiss it, but the truth is I think he understood it, but I think he understood it in a way that he wasn't able to write about as scientifically as Carl Jung was able to do. So I don't dismiss Freud as either, even though for many years I did kind of dismiss him because I'm similar to Carl Jung. I'm not as similar to Freud. Jung came up with the idea of the collective unconscious, which definitely supported by these behavior of these monkeys on these two islands, where, and they're not these islands are not near each other. There's no strip of land. There's nothing connecting these islands. They're actually quite a ways away from each other. There's quite a bit of distance and separation between these two islands. But once the researchers taught the monkeys on one island to do something, suddenly, like out of the blue, the monkeys on the other island were suddenly started doing those things. They started behaving in that way. That's pretty unprecedented, and that is evidence to, and that's not what the researchers, like, they were researching and documenting the phenomenon. They weren't drawing any conclusions from it. I am the one drawing conclusions from it. I am saying, to me, that is proof of a collective unconscious. So so now primates have this ability to see, I can't do the two at the same time. So now primates have this ability to think and to have a little bit of unconscious communication, and that suddenly makes the primates, a potential conduit for thought becoming sentient. I don't know that the primates were given another drop of life. I do believe that something kind of, I don't know what exactly Yahweh and Yeshua did to kind of tweak them, to turn them into sentient beings. We're definitely genetically related to chimpanzees more than chimpanzees and gorillas are related to each other genetically, and by quite a bit. There's only a small amount of difference genetically between humans and chimpanzees, in a way that chimpanzees and gorillas are actually much further apart genetically. There are actually a lot more differences between chimpanzees and gorillas. But chimpanzees are not even the closest thing to humans. I believe the bonobo are the most similar to humans, but I need to refresh myself on that. I just know that humans and chimpanzees have much closer genetic structure than chimpanzees do to gorillas or any of the other primates. That's a big deal. That's a really clarifying thought and idea. I don't know what needed to happen to the first, the Homo sapiens, the Homo erectus, the Neanderthal. We have genetically found that there is a little bit of Neanderthal in us. So there was some crossbreeding between those, which is something that we never thought before. We never thought that Neanderthals were in any part of the Homo sapiens gene pool, and yet we're now finding that maybe there was a little bit of genetic mixing, especially in the beginning. We don't know. But there does seem to be a little bit of what we would call racism, or perhaps at that time it wasn't even racism. Perhaps at that time it was speciesism, but there was definitely conflict and fighting and killing between the different types of hominids back then. I don't even know if hominid is the right word. Wow. I'm really showing my lack of memory of my biology. But anyway, the point is, I'm not sure if more life was given to different groupings of primates to see if they could achieve the level of sentiency, or if Yahweh and Yeshua decided to just kind of watch and see if anybody developed it over time. So I don't know if that's something that was developed over time, or if we did actually finally get an extra drop or two or more in order to get us up to the level of sentiency. It might have been something akin to a kid who they're trying to achieve a result in their homework assignment, and it's going too slowly, and it's not taking as much time, so they add more of the mixture, and there's suddenly an immediate reaction. So I do know that the sentiency mattered a little bit, but definitely things like paintings, cave drawings, and writings, things like that, that definitely indicated sentiency. Because if you're sentient of yourself, then you want to document your history. That's something that is true for all sentient creatures. And the more we found that even in animals, the more sentient, again, whales, dolphins, elephants, those are fairly highly sentient. They're not sentient like we are, but they're the closest to sentiency in the animal world, and they do their best to actually record themselves a little bit. And primates do too, to a certain extent, but really I would say that it wasn't that, oh, there was sentiency and then thousands of years later we developed the ability to write or to paint, and then we started communicating linguistically. I wouldn't say that. I would say that if you're sentient, you start working on your linguistics immediately. You start working on documenting yourself immediately. If you're sentient of yourself, you want to start, you start making plans for settling down, stabilizing yourself, stabilizing your family, stabilizing your city, your civilization, setting up water conduits and and sewage systems and food supplies, food in the field, food in the animals, everything. And you start building a civilization for yourself, and you start doing it right away. I do know that there are a couple of wild tribes still left in the world that have not been taken over by researchers, and in those tribes, they all they all have sentiency, they all have linguistic communication, they all document themselves through carvings, through paintings, through writing. They all have all of these things in common, and they don't, and none of those things are missing. There's never, even a tribe that has one, two, and many, and that's the only form of counting they've got. Even they have writing, painting, linguistic communication. They have traditions. They have all kinds of things that they have a culture that they've set up for themselves. And this is definitely, in my opinion, a sign of sentiency. I don't think that sentiency came a long time before the documentation came. I think that whatever carbon dating is on the cave paintings and the form of writing and scribing, I think if those are the earliest ones that exist, they may not be the earliest ones that exist. There may be ones that are earlier, but I think that can very well be a sign of when sentiency began. Whether or not it was something that developed up out of the mixture of clay and life that Yahweh and Yeshua gave to us, to creatures, or whether or not they added a few more drops of life to kind of, get the thoughts, get the thoughts up to a higher level sooner rather than later. I'm not sure, and the truth is that's about as deep as I want to go on it, because I think that to go any deeper is to start getting into the mechanics of the mixture of thought and life. I do want to talk about something else. This is just something interesting. I've always been fascinated with the idea that the body is the thing that not determines, but if you damage a body, you can make it to where somebody's not living anymore. But I've seen so much evidence of people being able to control whether or not they live or die. And that's something that you know, I've seen Bob, what's his name? Bob Shantz. He was shot in the head, but he had clear thinking, and he, as soon as he was shot, he thought, I feel good, I feel great, and I'm happy and healthy. I feel good, I feel great, I'm happy and healthy. And he just thought that the whole way. And by the time he got to the hospital, there wasn't much there. Even though they pulled out a bullet from his brain, everything healed up super, super fast. He literally went home the next day. That is really fast healing. And that's from somebody, Bob Shantz is somebody who has very clear thinking, very clear emotions. So, you know, he's very successful in what he does in life, and he's a very amazing person. I've met him. He's very sweet. He told me I had a pretty name. Of course, that made me like him more. It's great. It's great human social intelligence that he was using right then. I think he's a sweetheart, but of course that could be that could be from the fact that he smiled at me, shook my hand, and told me I had a pretty name. So the but the thing about the mechanics of that is that I like to watch surgery videos, and I like to watch surgery videos that have like open heart surgery, because I've always thought it would be really interesting to be a cardiac surgeon. And I'm looking at these videos, and I realize it could just be in my head, but I feel like I'm able to see the physical separation of the body and the spirit, and I feel like I'm able to see that. And I know that many people who have lost loved ones, they feel like the spirit is still with the body even after the body's died, and so they feel like they're still able to talk to that person and communicate with that person. I feel like that means something if it's happened so many times that it's a common thing for people now. I think that when people expose themselves to the idea that there's a being, a person, a spirit being inside the body, and we don't say I am hand, or I am, I am hair, I am head. They say my hand, this hand belongs to me, it is not me. This hair, this long beautiful brown hair that I love bragging about so much. I know, I'm such a bragger, it's so horrible. My hair belongs to me, my head belongs to me, but they are not me. So I believe that the spirit is the me that we talk about when we refer to ourselves. I think that is that thing. But I feel like in these surgery videos, when I see the heart, and the heart, you're seeing the heart beating, and you're seeing them working on the things that need to be repaired in these surgery videos. I feel like I can see the separation of the body and the spirit. I feel like I can see it right there. And now I know that I'm probably imagining it. There are many things in my life that I have not imagined that are very, very real. But on that, it's less clear. So I'm not saying it definitively or anything. I'm not saying that I can see it, because maybe I can't. Maybe I'm not seeing it. Maybe it's just in my head. But it's kind of a fun idea. And considering that Yahweh and Yeshua created us through mixing clay and thought, it makes me, oh good, I finished that one side while I'm still talking. Wow. I was actually able to do kind of, sort of, two at the same time. Not really. But since I know that Yahweh and Yeshua created us through mixing clay with a few drops of thought, and of course thought is way more efficient than clay, which means there can be a whole lot of clay and just a few drops of thought, and it creates us. Because I know that, it does make me feel like maybe I can see it when I'm watching something like an open heart surgery. It's kind of a cool idea, but that could just be my feeling. That could just be something that I just kind of, I just kind of feel like I have a feel for it, but it may not be true. When I asked Yahweh and Yeshua about why humanity was created, why were we created? Why was it such a why are we even still living if that's all we were? If it was just a thought experiment. But the thing is, when they put thought into us, that's part of themselves. I like the verse in the Bible where it says God, breathed the breath of life into Adam, and that picture is just so accurate. It's I do believe that it was more like drops of thought, into us, but the idea that God breathed the breath of life into Adam and made him living, that is such a clear notion of the fact that he was clay, and that thought had to be added to him. This thought and emotion. I don't want to leave out emotion, because emotion is definitely part of it. We actually have to have an entire, our brains can deal with thought. Our brains are very powerful, but we actually have to have an entire endocrine system to actually deal with the emotion in thought. So there's thought, which is the brain-based traits, and then there's the emotion, which we call the heart-based traits. There's actually our endocrine system. And so we actually had to have two different, very complex and completely separate systems in our bodies in order to be able to process both the thought and the emotion of God. And that is just, that blows my mind. The concept of that, the idea of that is like, oh my God, it blows my mind. It makes me think, wow, we were really, fearfully and wonderfully made. The whole verse that says that, it's like, I feel like that when I think about the fact that in order to even hold thought, the thought that God has in us, the living sentient life that God has, in order to hold a drop of that within us, we needed to have both brain and a brain, which is an enormously complex thing that we don't fully understand to this day, even now, and an endocrine system, which we do fully understand, but is all throughout the body. It's not just in one location, it's all throughout the body. The endocrine system, we needed both in order to even hold the full compounding of thought and emotion together, which is the thought of God. God is not just brain-based or heart-based. God is both, Okay, I've got the first two layers done. And so when I think about, and I've got the top yellow cross done. So when I think about why humanity was made, the first question I have for Yahweh and Yeshua is, okay, does that mean that you're just going to, get tired of us, get finished with us, want to get rid of us? No. Because we hold a little bit of God in us, we are now extensions of them. It's like our children, we care about our children. We do care about the continuation of the species. So even if they're not our children, we do care about children, in the first place. But however, we really care, and we're very protective and overprotective of our own children, because they are not just children of the species that we're trying to protect and take care of. They are from our DNA, and we can feel that. We can feel that they are extensions of us. So I like the idea that God is staying with us, that Yahweh and Yeshua are both staying with us, not because not because we've done anything, or not because we're particularly special, but because we are extensions of them. We're a little bit of their thought of who they are mixed with clay. And yes, it was an after-school science experiment, essentially, but we are part of them. So of course they care about us. So of course they're not going to just leave us hanging. And I like that. I like the fact that we are so very, very small and insignificant, and yet, because we are still extensions of them, just like our children are extensions of us, they care about us. And they really want us to do well. They want us to be just like they are, which is rich and in good relationships, and healthy and immortal and happy and having everything we want, and exploring and knowing the universe, and just loving it all at all times. So I like that we are built like this. I know that some people need us to be a little bit more the star, and if you're one of those people who you need us to kind of not be just an after-school science experiment made by Yahweh and Yeshua, please understand that they don't do anything half-assedly. They don't do anything out of boredom or because, you know, whatever, I kind of care about this, I don't really care about it though, it doesn't really matter to me. No, 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 they're not like that at all. They're so loving and they care so deeply about whatever it is they're doing. So they cared about what they were creating. They cared about the drops of themselves that they were putting into rock. They cared about what they were doing with that. And so, okay. And now to the end, this is the part where I have to really concentrate because I really can't talk and do this at the same time. Okay, so the first foundation, 1, second foundation, 2, and then I do 5 righty algs in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then do 5 lefty algs in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that solved one side, and that often has to be repeated. So I'm going to now do the whole thing again. First foundation, second foundation, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the whole thing is solved. So guys, I really love that you guys joined me. I love talking to you guys about all these things because they're just so magical and beautiful and amazing and great. And I want to thank everyone again. Thank you so much for your financial gifts. I love it. I love all the blessings I receive from you guys. And of course, whenever you do financially bless me, that amount, whatever amount you gave me, you get that amount of my energy in response. You actually feel it inside of yourselves. I hear it all the time from people that whatever they gave me, they feel like they received that much of my energy, and they're walking around with that much of my spirit and my nature in them, and they really like it. Well, I've never had somebody say they didn't like it. I guess if they didn't like it, they wouldn't tell me, would they? So I just want to thank you guys so much for all of your help and support and donations, funding, and just the blessings that you give me. Just the overflowing waterfall of blessings. Guys, I love you guys so much. Thank you so much.